Hey, our guest today is Adrienne Trimble. I met Adrienne several years ago. Actually, I was a fan of hers before I met her because her stance on human rights and the opportunity for minorities in business were so strong. So when she became president and CEO of NMSDC, which stands for the National Minority Supplier Development Councils, wow, was I thrilled to get to know her better. You're going to get to know her better as well. As a matter of fact, the work that many have done through NMSDC are represented by the awards you see behind me now. Each of these awards are the result of a relationship that my company has had with NMSDC, most recently being named the supplier at the fourth level for NMSDC. That's the largest supplier award that can be one company can be honored with, and we won it in 2020. Now, let's talk about Adrienne. Adrienne is, as I mentioned, the president and CEO of the National Minority Supplier Development Council. Prior to that, she enjoyed a huge corporate career that culminated with her leading Toyota's DE&I processes. She won many awards for them, worked with many well-known people and organizations, and led that company's rise on the Diversity Inc. Top 50 list from 42 to 29 in just to 25 in just 2 short years. Adrienne's appointment marks a significant milestone, though, in NMSDC's long and close relationship with Toyota. You see, she led their diversity spend from 2005 to 2012 and grew it to reflect a supplier base that increased it 300%. I'm talking about topping nearly $3 billion in spend with diverse suppliers. So she came into NMSDC knowing her stuff and prepared to help others learn theirs. One of the things that I want to share with you before she joins us is that she's also a graduate of Wilberforce University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Organization Management. She and her husband, Jamil, live in Texas. She has 2 beautiful adult daughters. And so grounding her faith, her knowledge, her experience, she's coming here today to share with us. Settle in and enjoy my conversation with someone who I have admired for a long time and now am very honored to consider a friend, Adrienne Trimble.
Joining us right now is one of America's most successful female entrepreneurs.
Special guest speaker today, the first African-American woman
to own a billion-dollar company. Her name is
Janice Bryant Howroyd. She's the founder and CEO of
Act One is one of the largest staffing companies in the United States.
She's now ranked by Forbes as the second wealthiest self-made African-American woman in America, behind only Ms. Oprah Winfrey.
She spent almost 40 years helping others find work.
Janice, great to have you on the show.
Wonderful to be
Thank
here.
you so much for joining us.
Janice, welcome to the
And here she is. Wow, Adrienne. Everybody's excited about this conversation. Just being able to talk with you on a one-on-one format. I mean, you've been on stage for so much of your career. Having you just sitting at home and sharing with us your journey, your lessons that help us to improve our journey. This is such a gift. Then again, you've always been a giving person. Take us back to your childhood. Where did the giving start?
So, well, thank you, first of all, for having me on. I have watched a number of your podcasts, and I know how engaging these are, and you do get to learn so much about different leaders that are in the community doing great things. So thank you for considering me as part of that leadership community. For me, I was born and raised in a small suburb outside of Cleveland, Ohio, in an area called Maple Heights. At the time that I grew up in Maple Heights, it was a highly segregated community where all of the Black families lived in one little neighborhood surrounded by more of a working class white community. And I remember our neighborhood was being bused to the other school districts for integration purposes. And so they broke our neighborhood up and kind of sent us in various ways to support the integration requirements of our school system. And I'll tell you, this is probably when I first got my bug for wanting to represent those that are underrepresented or those that don't have a voice for themselves. Because I remember pulling up in a school bus that day when we first got to the new elementary school that we would be attending.
How
And
old would you
Janice,
be, Adrienne? How old would you
I
be?
was 10 years old. I was in the fifth
Wow.
grade, 10 years
Wow.
old. And I guess a number of the students had heard that we were coming. And we got through the first day, but when we got on the bus to leave, all of these students came from nowhere. They were throwing rocks at our bus, calling us the N-word, telling us not to come back. And I remember looking out the window, and it feels like yesterday. I remember looking out the window asking, how can these people hate us so much and they don't even know us? All because of the color of our skin. And to me, you know, I can reflect on this years later. That behavior was learned. These were just kids. So they didn't know any better. This behavior was being taught to them in their homes. It was being taught to them by people who held professional positions that had to interact with people from all walks of life, whether they were teachers or doctors or lawyers or business owners. They, you know, the world was much bigger than what was represented just by that community. And I could see then, and I could reflect on it later, that there was a lot of work to be done to help people understand that we have more in common than we have different from each other. So that kind of helped me on my journey as I started thinking about what I wanted to do with my life. At that time, going through high school and even going into college, I always thought I would be a civil rights attorney. That's kind of what I was thinking that I would end up doing. Again, being that voice for someone who's not been heard or the voiceless or those who are underserved. But I found a way to be able to accomplish the same thing, just doing it inside corporate America.
Well, I have to say you've done it splendidly. I mean, your reputation well preceded you before you even reached NMSDC. And as our fearless leader, you know, when you think about growing up and growing up in the heartland of America, experiencing that, you didn't leave that with a heart of bitterness, nor did you leave it with a lack of belief in your own ability to achieve. What was the deciding factor that helped you, not so much to set you apart from others who grew up like you, rather to make you the very special, successful human being who still has a heart for giving and a heart of for unity?
It was my mother. My mother raised 3 girls as a single parent by herself, working to take care of us the best that she could, with limited resources. And it took a village that she had to depend on, you know, her sisters, neighbors, others to kind of help with us. And for me, I remember just hearing her, watching how hard she worked, Janice. She worked extremely hard. And that work ethic was kind of instilled in us as her daughters. And she always told us that we could do whatever we wanted to do if we just worked hard to achieve it, and that we were no less than anyone else. No matter what those kids at school were trying to tell us, we were no less than anyone else. And I remember I was talking to her one day. I don't know if you remember, I'm dating myself here, but remember that television show that was called Hotel at the time? It was a show that came on. So we were watching that show one day, and I was just so enthralled with this beautiful resort. And I said, you know, I would love to work at a hotel one day. And she said, well, why wouldn't you just own the hotel? And to me, I was thinking, you know, it never would, you know, that's the kind of behaviors and the type of thought that we have to put into the next generation, that we can be owners and not just consumers. And to me, that was such a foreign thought, but that's how she pushed me. So when I think about what has really driven me, it's always been my mother kind of raising that bar saying, but you can do so much more. And then once you start doing more, then it's to whom much is given, much is required. So you have to pay it back. You have to pay it forward. So that's kind of the thought process that I just live by, because that's what was instilled in me at a very young age.
Well, wow, have you honored her in how you not only achieve for yourself, but especially for so many others. And we're going to talk about that. One of the things I have to say, though, and I know all of our family are witnessing that right now, Adrienne, you know, you're very well known for not just your expertise and your voice for others, but you also bring a certain carriage and an elegance to what you do. Was that an influence from those women who you just mentioned being a part of your upbringing, your mom and your aunts?
Well, there was some of that. They had their own sense of glamour back then. When I think about the big afros they wore and the platform boots, it was always kind of stylish. But really, I didn't really get that sense until I left Cleveland when I went to the University of Cincinnati, enrolled in school there, and I saw a whole different lifestyle when I started working in corporate America. That, you know, the professional, you know, you wear the suits and you show up, and you show up with presence so that your voice can be heard before you even walk in the room. So there were others that I would just see that had that kind of style about them. And I knew that it became kind of the uniform almost, that you have to show up and represent those who you are representing, right? So it just became a part of who I was as I watched folks in corporate America really see them on their trajectory and how they were able to influence, negotiate, and that confidence that it gives you when you walk in and you know that you belong at that table.
Well, I can tell you many women who are members and attendees of NMSDC events have commented out of your earshot that they would love you to give lessons on that. So now now that we're all home, maybe you can do a Zoom. Maybe I can host you to a Zoom to just kind of teach some of us how we create that, because, you know, it's not just about what you're wearing. I think so much that they are attracted to you, as am I. I think it's how you wear it. I mean, you do bring an elegance. You bring an attention to the details, I think, that matter. I've noticed that simplicity with a sparkle is kind of how I would describe your style. You don't overfluff it. That's also, to me, what I get from your lessons and your teachings as you're leading us on how to build better businesses, how to make connections with corporate America if we are minority business owners, and how to communicate with each other. Yeah, I think simplicity with sparkle kind of is how I would describe you. How do you describe yourself?
You know, Janice, I'm only 5'2". So, and people know that I'm always in heels. So I'm always in heels because I'm only 5'2". So I actually, when you coined that, when you said that, the simplicity with the sparkle, I would say that's it. You know, I do believe in, you know, simplicity and just being, you know, and having great accessories to kind of bring out the outfit, to complement the outfit, to complement your personality. So, you know, for me, it is pretty much around that just that simplicity of it, and then what can really add to it, because you don't want to be so loud that you walk into a room that's what people see and what they focus on. You want them to focus on what you have to say and what you're bringing to the table from a thought leadership perspective, and not just about the flashiness of your attire.
Yeah, you wear it, it doesn't wear you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how you teach us, how you support us, I think is such a strong alignment with that philosophy. I remember listening to you once talking to a group, and you said, at the end of the day, you've got to be able to back up everything you say about yourself, but people are going to listen more to what other people are saying about you. And I may paraquote you, but I took that out of there and I watched the people around me listening to you. And I noticed a couple of people changing their pitches before they were going into those meetings after you said that. That seemed to come more from a place of experience than a place of academic learning for you. Has that been your own experience in your career, having been a career professional versus entrepreneur in the typical sense of one?
Absolutely, Janice. And one of the things that I think people don't realize is the conversation that goes on after you've left the room. And when you don't have champions or advocates in that room, your job becomes even that much more difficult. And my career started in human resources. So many times I would be in the room having in those conversations, And it's why I fought so hard to make sure I was in the room and being a part of those conversations, because I wanted to make sure that there was someone else in there that was advocating for those who were not represented. So I would hear the conversations of what someone would say. Someone could come in, whether it was for a position that they were interviewing for, or even when I moved into supplier diversity for someone that was pitching their business. They would pitch their business and or pitch their position in terms of their experiences for a role, hear all this great feedback. Oh, that's great. Oh, that sounds really good. All this positive feedback. They would walk out in the room, and then you would hear the, yeah, but, yeah, they don't have this, or yeah, that. So there's a whole different conversation that goes on once you leave. So that's why I started thinking that people need to understand that. Don't just go in and try to present what you think they need to hear. You need to know what problem they're trying to solve, what value you're bringing, and how you're able to help that company move forward, whether it's from a human resources perspective or from a business perspective. Because if you don't, then they won't have anything to advocate for on your behalf once you leave the room.
Well, you talk a lot about advocacy, and you live a lot about advocacy. The fact that you could choose anything you want to do in your life, and let's be honest, you've earned the right to do that. You certainly have that right, differently than many, and yet you chose to take on the leadership of one of the motherships for DE&I. And if it's in the US, basically it's speaking to the world. How did you come to that decision? I mean, you had to give up a lot to do this.
I did. But I'll tell you, I've always been very supportive of NMSDC over the years. When I look at the legacy that Harriet Michelle built, first of all, I thought that her leadership was just second to none. She could go toe to toe with anyone in any room on any topic. So my admiration for her is high. And I saw the organization, the legacy that she built. And then I saw the transition that NMSDC was going through over the years after she retired. And I felt if I could bring anything to help restore the organization back to the forefront of leadership of advocacy for minority businesses, it was almost like a calling for me. So as I was sitting in corporate America and still enjoying my role leading diversity and inclusion for one of the largest companies in the world, thinking, okay, if this is something that my talents could be used to help others, because when you think about minority business development and the impact that it has on our communities, it goes far beyond just your traditional diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies, right? This is life-changing. This is about wealth generation building, and what we do for generations to come for sustainability and the impact it has on the economy. I mean, it's just a much bigger implication than just your traditional diversity, equity, and inclusion. So for me, I thought, if I could be a part of that solution and help solve that problem, not even knowing what was going to come in 2020, who knew that was going to come? But if I could be a part of that, then I'm happy to serve. So for me, that's what it was about.
You know, Adrienne, you mentioned, and I think rightfully so, I know rightfully so, the impact that Harriet's leadership has had on NMSDC and on communities at large. One of the things that she was a clarion for, and I see you do that as well, is not just the impact for minority communities, but the impact for the corporate community and good business itself. What is it that people need to understand about diversity and inclusion in a supplier base and its impact on the business community and enterprises at large?
So let's face it, when you think about the supply chain overall, and this was the lesson learned in 2020, right? Prior to 2020, a number of corporations had outsourced so much of their supply chain globally, right? And they really were focusing on global solutions. And when we had the major disruption to the supply chain in 2020 due to COVID or other issues that started impacting our economy here, they had to find solutions right here in the US. So they had to turn to the same supply base that they had kind of shut out over the years, because they were looking at these global solutions or looking at much larger solutions as they consolidated their supply base and things of that nature. So when you start thinking about the implications to the US economy, let's take a step back and look at what the data is telling us. The US Census has already told us that the US economy, the US demographic is going to change. The minority will become the majority. So we know that that's going to happen. Who is going to be the entrepreneur of the future? Who's going to be the consumer of the future? Who's going to be your workforce of the future? So all of this is telling us we have the indicators to understand what that means now today. The question is, how do you begin to prepare for it? How does corporate America begin to prepare for that? You can't wait to 10, 15, 20 years out. You need to start cultivating that innovation with these most nimble suppliers that are out there that just happen to be diverse. And that was my whole thing, is that you're looking at a supply base and what's available to you right here in the US that can bring you solutions very quickly, nimbly. They're not as bureaucratic as some of your larger organizations. Why would you not want to tap into this, who, by the way, just happen to represent the diversity of what this country will look like in 10, 15, 20 years out, and what our consumer base will look like. So trying to help them understand it from that perspective is that's when the aha went off. And I don't think people saw it until 2020 happened, and we all of a sudden saw the heavy reliance upon this on the supply base.
Adrienne, that's so important. You know, the majority of our family, our listening community, are 35 years and under. Many of them are college students. Most of them are young professionals. Provide a link to them right now. And we're certainly going to mention that at the finish of this conversation. We'll show them, but provide a link right now if people want to be able to talk with NMSDC in a way that helps them to understand the value you bring for those young entrepreneurs. Where do they go to visit the website?
Sure. So they can start by visiting nmsdc.org. What's also helpful is that when you go to our main website, you can also get connected to one of our 23 affiliate councils that are spread out across the country, so that you can have a more direct relationship with the council that's right within your region, which could be very helpful for those local connections that can be made for the local suppliers and local corporations. So that's also located on our website as well.
And you guys do such, I say you guys, I feel as though I should say we, because I feel such a part of NMSDC. By the way, you see all of these awards back
I'm
here.
looking, yes.
I mentioned in the introduction that every award they're looking at is the result of a relationship with NMSDC. And they're not just awards for the sake of honoring stuff. They actually represent commerce. They represent business. They represent dollars. I mean, the impact that NMSDC is having for diverse suppliers is huge. And the preparation for suppliers, as you mentioned earlier, to come into an environment like we've never seen before. And still many of your suppliers are continuing to do business because of what they've learned through the organization or connections they've made. Can you just talk a little bit about the business of NMSDC and why I'm so enthusiastic about it?
So NMSDC, the organization has been around since 1972. And I don't think people realize that the organization was actually created by chief procurement officers of Fortune 50 companies who said they wanted a way to reach the minority supply base and minority entrepreneur. And a lot of that came from the work that was being done in the automotive industry by companies such as Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, because they understood it, they got it. They understood who was actually buying their product, and they knew that they needed that direct link back to the consumer, which comes through minority business development. So for us, it's about how do you cultivate those relationships and those connections so that corporate America knows about our minority businesses, understands their capability, understands the impact of doing business with minority entrepreneurs, and understands the way that it can help their business grow and evolve and solve solutions within their supply chain. So we focus a lot around those connection pieces, whether those are through our conferences, where we have our trade shows, whether it's through our matchmakers, where we have the ability for our corporations to say, these are the specific areas that we are sourcing for, that we're looking to bring in new suppliers for. And then they get the opportunity to see what the capabilities are and what our minority businesses can actually bring to the table to address some of their needs in the supply chain. Connection is so important because, Janice, we all know people do business with those that they know, like, and trust. So we have to make sure that we are facilitating the connection of our corporate members with our MBEs. The second piece of it is really around the development activity, making sure that our MBEs are positioned with stronger capabilities, stronger capacity building, understanding, again, how do they pitch to these corporations so that they can get the attention and get the response back to their proposals, giving them all the tools and resources that they need to be successful when they go after these contracts. And it's also about helping to develop our corporate members, right? So that they know how they have, what's the best practice look like for a robust supply chain inclusion? How do you really set up a strong supplier diversity process that starts with your top leaders supporting it and them understanding why this is so important? How do you share the business case within your organization so that anyone who's making a buying decision knows how to include diverse suppliers as part of that process? So we spend a lot of time working with our supplier diversity professionals as well, training them and educating them. The third area is really around our advocacy work, and I already talked a lot about that, making sure that there is a voice, a collective voice for our minority businesses. So, and again, we saw it very clearly with what happened in 2020. We had to work so closely with the White House as they were developing stimulus packages, the PPP loans and funding that was coming out. It was being created for small businesses, but we knew that there were special nuances that impacted minority suppliers. So how do we make sure that their voice is being heard? So that's another key around the work that we do, is around the advocacy. And of course, the last one, which is really first, it's our certification. It is the gold standard. It is the certification that helps get those businesses in the door that are 51% owned, operated, and controlled by a minority or minority entities. We are the organization that has established the certification process that many other organizations built their processes upon, because it is the foundation for how you are able to determine these firms truly are owned and operated by minority companies.
And I can tell you that the Act One group is very proud to carry the certification of NMSDC, as well as a corporate plus membership,
Yes,
which I'm gonna ask you to talk about a little bit in a minute. Before I do though, you know, you talked about how NMSDC grew up from infancy as a strong advocate for doing business, corporates and diverse suppliers, the work that Harriet Michelle, Eric Vicioso, and I don't know if you are old enough to remember Ray Jensen from Ford Motor.
Yes, yes, Ray helped train a lot of us in supplier diversity. I knew Ray Jensen, yes.
I was so blessed to have been able to meet him before he retired as well, and to learn at his knee. Here's the question though for you. You know, when NMSDC was doing business then, a lot of it was face-to-face interacting. You knew what somebody had for lunch because you could smell it. Today, NMSDC has had to grow. We've gone virtual, and yet somehow you've been able to continue to improve programs, outcomes, and deliver results that are astounding. You continue to be a leader. How are you doing that?
I'll tell you what has made the difference is the team that we have in place. We're very fortunate that we have a number of folks that are working on the NMSDC leadership team that actually came from corporate America. They made that same sacrifice because they were so committed to the mission and the work of NMSDC to bring their corporate experience into a nonprofit organization. A lot of nonprofits can't really have the ability to attract that level of talent. Because of our mission and the type of work that we do, we've been able to do that. So by having such a strong leadership team, they were the ones really out front coming up with innovative ways to pivot very quickly from a destination event to a virtual event, getting the right resources in. And then our board of directors giving us the support that we needed to get the right technology, the right infrastructure that we needed to be able to continue moving forward. And I think what was so important that everybody needed to understand, and what they did understand, this was the most critical time for minority businesses, because we saw the report that came out in May that of the small businesses that went out of business, 40% were minority owned. And of that 40%, 60% by November said that they doubt that they would actually be able to get back in business. So we knew that this was a critical juncture for minority firms, that we had to have this resource for them. We had to make sure that the work continued to move forward, and we had to have ways to continue connecting them with corporate America. Their livelihood and our communities depended on it.
Well, thinking about you, a 10-year-old, getting on a bus and being told not to come back because of the color of your skin. Thinking about how you left a really chummy position in corporate America to take on championship for a cause that you're so committed to. When statistics in 2020, even if close to being a full aggregation, suggest those challenges still exist and are growing in some instances for people of color. How do you then, Adrienne, inspire the young women who are listening to your voice right now, who are seeing you sitting here still passionate and committed? How do you talk to them about their opportunity and how they should be seeing?
I'll tell you, one thing I think is so inspiring, and not necessarily for me, but just what's inspiring for all women right now, is that when you look at the data, we're seeing more women entrepreneurs leave corporate America and start and take charge of their own destiny, is what I call it. They're starting to say, if I can work in corporate America and have this level of success, then certainly I can do this on my own. And we see women businesses are the fastest growing segment of small businesses right now. And what I say to them is, if you have something in your heart and you have a great idea or a great solution that you know can help another company be able to accomplish its goals, go for it. There are so many women entrepreneurs out here that are willing to mentor, to help support, to help provide resources, to help other women entrepreneurs be successful. And I think that's what speaks to which is so inspiring about the work that we do, because again, it goes right back to those relationships and making sure that we as NMSDC continue to create an infrastructure that allows those relationships to be nurtured. We really put a lot of focus around our Women of Color initiatives last year for that particular reason. We saw that women entrepreneurs were the fastest growing segment. Our corporations were asking for this focus because they too saw that this was the fastest growing segment of the small business community. And in fact, for those companies those corporations that are consumer facing, they also understood the impact to their brand by having women entrepreneurs involved in their supply chain. I saw a study that showed that when you look at the household purchases made, that women influence 80% of those decisions. Mm-hmm. So if women are the main consumers out here, and now they're entrepreneurs, what better way for them to be a part of the overall economic system to say, how can I help contribute to the overall US economy with my ideas and my resources and my know-how, by also being able to engage and to drive outcomes as it relates to those corporations that are looking to do business with them. So there is a business case and a cycle that shows the interdependency upon corporate America to these women entrepreneurs, and to these women entrepreneurs to each other. So to me, it's all interrelated work. And I'm just excited to be one of those conduits to help bring all the dots together to kind of make those connections happen and bring them to life.
Well, wow, are you doing it? You're doing it every day. And you do it with such agility and such passion, yet you still maintain that sense of peace that when we look at you, we see calm and we see confidence. How did you gain that working in an environment that can, for others, feel quite hostile, Adrienne?
It has to be, for me, it's been my spiritual journey, because you have to take care of yourself. And that's sometimes hard for us as women. We tend to take care of everyone else first and then put ourselves at the bottom of the list. And for me, having that spiritual connection and being able to take a step back and to allow myself to connect with my creator and really work in my purpose, what my creator has for me, makes a difference. Because when I know I'm working in that purpose, and I'm doing his will, not my will, but his will, I'm protected. I am protected completely, and there is no harm that can come to me, no matter how much others may try, because my destiny is determined not by anything or anyone on this earth. So to me, you can't have anything but peace when you know that you have that kind of covering, that kind of protection, that kind of support that comes from a source that no man could possibly give you. So for me, that's what drives me. When people look at me and they say, "How do you do this?" That's how.
You know, you bring me back to something else you said. And look, family, if you don't know by now, I listen to everything Adrienne says, okay? I learn and get better for it. I remember you once saying something to the effect of, what's happening is real around, and this is long before COVID or long before January 6, 2021. You were saying, look, I know it's real. A lot of stuff is happening out there, but you got to make sure that you're in charge of what's happening in here, in your hearts. And that's going to be your cover when you go out there, because you can educate your mind as much as you want to, but you were encouraging us that our hearts had to lead us. And then our minds were talk a little bit about that, Adrienne. That's really been important to you in an environment where you are very data supported, data driven, and data defended. You're talking about the heart.
And that's something, especially when you're in a professional setting, that some people aren't necessarily comfortable with, simply because they just don't understand it, or because it's not tangible, right? You can't touch it, you can't feel it. And to your point, when we live in a society that is so data driven and really, really responsive to data points of information, when you have to speak to things that are driven from within, it's hard for people to sometimes understand that unless they too are on that same spiritual journey. So when I ask people, because to me, it seems like that's part of my calling as well, is to help people get to a place where they have that peace, and that they can figure out ways that they can still be productive and be entrepreneurial in their thinking, but still be true to who they are. And that's something I think sometimes, I say this now because I'm a woman of a certain age, that maybe I may not have understood when I was a lot younger or earlier in my career. So if I could help someone learn that earlier in their career and create environments where it's okay for that to be accepted, that to me is another reason why I do the work that I do, and why I convey the messages that I convey, so that people can know that we need to create opportunities for people to feel comfortable with who they are and how they approach things that may be different than how someone else approaches it, but that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. It's okay. And we have to try to keep that okay.
I've certainly witnessed that based on what suppliers say and how they grow in your organization. And, I never told you this. I've certainly witnessed how suppliers who come from different faith bases, they may come from different political persuasions, certainly different cultures and languages. I've heard more than a few talk about how your good spirit guides them and gives them confidence in the organization, sometimes as much as some of the actual programs they engage in, that listening to you, they want to make sure if you're on the program, they're all in there. Does that faith that you speak about, that spiritual grounding that you speak from, does that help you to be that better listener? Because I wondered for myself, what is it that Adrienne herself is able to bring forward from that? And it occurred to me, maybe that spiritual peace that you have, that certainly fuels the passion. Maybe that's how you're a better listener for them. I don't know. What talk about that for me. Is there anything there?
It could be, but I tell you, what I think people sense is that it's never about me. And I think that's what people, when they get the chance to sit down and talk to me, understand that what I'm doing is not about me. It's about something much greater than me. And because of that, I do listen. And I'll tell you, there are times that I've actually been criticized because I'm not that beating on the table, yelling kind of leader that says, we got to do this, or, you know, that's not my style. My style is more reflective. Let me listen, go back and come back with a solution. So, you know, and I would have folks say that and make comparisons to me and other leaders all the time saying, oh, she's too quiet. She's not being voiceful enough. She's not being forceful enough. That style doesn't work for me. What works for me is being able to gather from others where the pain points are, where the challenges are, so I can go back and come up with a better solution. Maybe it's something again that I got from my upbringing, is that there's a reason why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Because if you're talking all the time, you can't hear, you can't listen if you're talking. So to me, there's a reason, and it's something I've been told over and over, that, you know, sometimes you might seem just a little too quiet. It's because I'm reflecting, I'm listening, and I'm taking in information so I can come back with a better solution.
Well, whether we are male or female, however we identify, there's so much that you've done that I think we can learn from. And one area of that I really want you to have an opportunity to talk about is identifying what your own personal mission is in life. Now, you were inspired very early on by circumstances that are not what any of us would want. You turned it into fuel for you. Talk with us about how we do that when we're in our early 20s and 30s. Because, you know, in my industry, I say you're going to have a lot of jobs on the path to your career, maybe, you know, be ready for that. Everybody doesn't know jumping out, you know, of the gate, what they want to do. But can you talk with us about things you've learned that helped you to identify or know, or that you think more importantly will help others?
So I think that, and some of it we've already covered, is it's really around knowing your purpose and trying to understand what your purpose is early enough. And I have 2 daughters that are in their early 20s, and trying to help them understand that is kind of what's helping me to see, okay, how do we get this message better across to this next generation? This next generation is very different than the way we grew up and the way that we pursued our careers. They have a much higher reliance on social media, social influencers. It's just a whole different way that they are conditioned versus how we were when we were coming up through our generation. So what I try to help instill in this next piece of this next group coming up is, okay, know your purpose, know that it's okay to take risks. Many of them are in better positions to take risks than at least I was when I was at that age, because I didn't have a safety net. You know, it was either if I didn't hunt, I didn't eat. So a lot of times these folks have that type of safety net that they could take advantage of. So I try to encourage you, take the risk. It's okay to fail. It's okay to hear no. You're going to hear no hundreds of times. Get used to it early enough so that you know how to take it and how to respond to it, because you're going to hear no. And so those are the types of things that I think is so important for these, particularly young women coming up, is to learn how to find their voice, learn how to find their purpose and their passion, and learn how to take care of themselves, living through their purpose and their passion. And that's okay. And you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to have some missteps along the way. Dust yourself off, learn from them, and keep moving forward. And I think that's that's the advice that I give my young people, my mentors that I work with. And that's what I think is going to help this next generation kind of find their way and find their path.
Well, I know your daughters have heard lots of things said about you. I pray they listen to this podcast. And if you're listening, ladies, I have to tell you, when your mom walks into a room, especially those I've given personal witness to, she may walk in quietly, but everybody is waiting to listen to what she has to say. And your mom has done something, I think, that rises to the level of art, even as it comes authentically, I believe, from her heart. And that is, she dares to tell the truth, even when it may not make new friends. The friends she has steadfastly support her because she does dare to tell the truth in the face of circumstances that simply not speaking might have been easier. And Adrienne, I say that with so much gratitude to you, because today I think that's something that's really important. You realize that 70% more or less of the people under 30 who come into our offices virtually now have their own websites.
Mm-hmm.
That means they're very conscious of their branding. How they brand and what they're branding to isn't always the best thing. And we have to coach them to assure that the way they brand themselves or the way they presence themselves on social media is going to be very much in front of any conversation they're going to have with an employer or an investor. Can you talk a little bit about that? And not just women, men, you know,
You're
this
right.
is gender neutral. This is gender inclusive.
Absolutely. And it is something that I think we need to have more coaching around, because in this era of social media where people put things on channels to get more likes or more shares, sometimes it could be a little, kind of a little out there. But I always tell folks, you have to think about, once it's out there, it's out there. You can't get it back. And that is tied directly to your brand. So always be cognizant of what you're putting out there and the way that you're going to be perceived. Is that the brand that you want when you start thinking about either the type of employment that you want to one day achieve? If you're going to become an entrepreneur, people are going to look at that, your brand, and tie that back into your services and decide if they want to even do business with you. All of that impacts who you are and what your brand is out in social media. And you can't just look at it as, oh, I got 1,000 likes on this today. Are they is it the likes that really reflect who you are and what your brand is and what you want your brand to be? And I know there are probably a ton of sessions out there, coaching sessions, to help these folks understand it. But I think it's incumbent upon us to really keep pushing in on that, because they have to know that it can come back to haunt them if it's not done appropriately.
And that's whether they're doing it in a personal way or if they're setting up their businesses and they think they've got some hot entrepreneurial idea. People are going to sell against what they put out there, aren't they?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we have this group called Emerging Young Entrepreneurs at NMSDC that we're bringing in the next generation of entrepreneurs to help train them in this very way. There's a whole class around, a whole module around the social media and how to effectively use social media to position your brand and making sure that, once you are out there as an entrepreneur, your brand is simultaneous with your personal brand. You can't separate the two. So you have to understand that whatever you do, you can't say, well, here's my business brand and here's what I'm putting out on my business, but then have some things out on your personal brand that may not be reflective of what your consumers may want to, how they may want to engage with you. It's all interconnected. So we have that module in place, particularly because they rely so heavily on it. And being virtual for this last, 9-10 months has even encouraged that even more. So it's something we have to make sure that they're ready for, and they take it seriously, because we want them to be successful. And they'd be surprised at how many people go onto their pages that they would never even know are on their pages, just looking at who they are as a person before they decide to do business with them.
And I've actually had representatives from some very, very major organizations. You referenced Fortune 50 companies who we do business with, who have, before giving us an opportunity, actually commented to me that they checked me out personally. They also have mentioned that as clients, they continuously check in to see what I'm doing. And it may be framed from a place of, oh, I just love following you because you're inspiring, or, oh, I like to see what you're doing. But the bottom line is, I don't get to separate myself from my company. And there's a responsibility as well as opportunity in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Adrienne, before we go to 4 for 4, there is one thing I want to ask you about. We talked a lot about how you groom yourself because you do have a fangirl following for that. But before you ever dress up, though, you've taken care of yourself spiritually and physically as well. Talk with us a little bit about what your routine looks like for taking care of yourself, holistically. How do you eat? How do you exercise? Help us to understand how Adrienne gets to be Adrienne.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm not as disciplined as I like to be in that regard. Being home for these last, several months has been very trying because I'm used to being on the go. I'm used to, on airplanes, going through airports and getting all my exercise in various ways. But what I found is that you have to schedule it like anything else. If it's a priority for you, you make it happen. So when I am in that mode where I'm thinking, okay, my eating habits haven't been where they need to be. I've not been doing my normal hydration like I need to. How do I make sure that I build water in? I got to schedule everything just like I do with any other priority that I have. So when I get into that mode where I'm back in workout mode, it becomes a part of my schedule. I'm up at a certain time. I'm hitting my home gym at this time. I'm planning my breakfast out so that I make sure that I eat something healthy versus grabbing a muffin, which I know I shouldn't have. So you have to just plan it. For me, that's how I get disciplined around it until I feel that I'm back in the mode that I need to be, where I'm being more conscious about eating healthy, drinking water, taking breaks like I need to, standing up and getting, instead of sitting in front of a computer all day, making sure that I'm being more agile in terms of getting my daily walks in, things like that. I have to schedule it. And so if I don't schedule it, it won't get done, because your day, as you know, it just gets so out of control. You have all these different things you're trying to do. So if I want to make sure that I stay healthy and stay, in shape, because, I've been married 28 years now, going on 29 years. And I like that my husband gives me a second look when I walk in the room. So that feels good to me. And I want to make sure he continues to do that. So when I'm out of my discipline, that's how I get back in and schedule it. So I make sure it happens.
Well, that's something that I think the two things you and I think have in common. One is, I simply put it, discipline ain't a dirty word. I don't mind the discipline of it. I know discipline kind of feels restraining or, argumentative to some people, but I've always embraced the outcome that discipline can offer you. And so I find strength and promise in discipline. And I see that you do as well. And then coming from a place where you're spiritually good and you can be at peace with people and you can have friends across different disciplines because of the peace and the spiritual comfort you have. I'm such a fan. Let's go 4 for 4, okay?
Well, it's mutual. The feeling is mutual.
And let me just pause one moment before we go 4 for 4 to share this with you, Adrienne. I've said this several times, and I'm sure you've articulated or heard it yourself a lot lately. Never before has the world been so solely engaged in solving for the same solution at the same time. That you bring such a light in the midst of this pandemic, and a calm and a purpose is so promising to so many people. For all of us who are members of NMSDC, whether we be corporate members, corporate plus members, or supplier members, I just really extend you a huge moment of gratitude for that. I cannot overstate that you would step forward and lead an organization because of the passion you have for what that organization does, and being prepared to leave a lot of security behind to do that. The many conversations you have and the nights that you stay up planning and then still showing up by day as if you've had a full 8 hours. For all of that, we thank you. We thank you for that. So
thank you. Thank you for that.
Here's to you. We're going to go 4 for 4. So that I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and you're going to give me 4 answers to each question and the reason for each of those answers. And I can hardly wait to go with you. First question: Adrienne, you get to have a dinner. You're hosting this dinner party, and you can have any 4 guests from any time in history or present you wish. Who's at your table?
So my 4 would be, of course, it's going to be 2 people. Barack and Michelle Obama would have to be at the table. The third person would be Mae Jemison, not Mae Jemison, not Mae Jemison. The third person would be, I would have to say Oprah, although I've had the opportunity to talk with Oprah, it'd have to be Oprah. And the last one would be Zora Neale Hurston.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. That's the first time Zora Neale Hurston has shown up. So tell us why those 4 people.
So for Barack and Michelle Obama, obviously, you know, being our first Black family in the White House is just significant. But they are just good people. They are just really good people and fun people and real people, authentic people. And I love being around folks like that who can be so wildly successful, highly successful, and still just be real. Just real. I've had the opportunity.
They're going to go on and eat, right? They're going to eat.
Exactly. You know, and have great conversation, and just to hear their stories over the years, it would just be phenomenal to hear that.
And in COVID, they'll probably help wash the dishes.
Exactly,
too, huh?
right. I can see Michelle doing that. Like, no, you sit down, you cooked, I got this. So yeah, so that'd be fantastic for me. With Oprah, because of her business sense. I mean, she has just owned her brand from day one. She has owned it, and she is non-apologetic about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
and you know, I think she had a great friendship with Maya Angelou.
Mm-hmm.
I almost a sisterhood there. I don't know how they identified their relationship. I'm sure I can scan back and hear her actually say how she would identify it. But what came across for me is that she seemed to have really taken so many of the lessons Maya taught, and then evolved it forward and presented it to a whole new generation and a wider audience. Don't you get that? I mean, I love her.
Yes, when she did the WW tours last year, I was fortunate to go to one of them when she had it here in Dallas. And you were absolutely right. A lot of what she talked about came from the information in the discussions and the conversations that she had with Maya Angelou. And she talked about that. And when she speaks of that, you could just hear a pin drop because everyone is just listening to that wisdom. And to me, I would love to just have my own quiet session with her to hear those inner thoughts and how it has made her just so comfortable with owning her own brand the way that she has. I think,
and you know, oftentimes you're right. Oftentimes, you know, you pull a word or a name and you throw the anagram essence to it. With Oprah, I always think ownership. She takes ownership for who she is. You know, she doesn't blame anybody else. She doesn't curse anybody else. She takes ownership for it. And P, she's very personal. You can be one of 1,000 in an audience and you still feel the personal connection she has to you because she speaks from a personal place, which I think is a part of that ownership. And then the R is the reasoning. She asks the reason why. She also wants reason in solution, you know? And then the attitude for the A. You know, there were times in her career where she had to have come to that stage or to that mic down, but she always brought an attitude of H, hope. You don't listen to Oprah. You don't experience anything she does without leaving full of hope, you know? And I think of her that way. Wow, I'm going to serve at that dinner because I want that experience as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And then for Zora Neale Hurston, just the ability to be able to capture our culture, our stories that resonate over generations. it's just, to me, such a powerful ability to capture that voice, to speak that voice, and that the teachings that she had in such a artful way. It's just, she's one of my all-time favorite authors, and I would just love to just hear her art.
Didn't she do some Hey, Adrienne, didn't Zora Neale Hurston do some journalistic work down in Florida that she didn't get the opportunity to actually evolve from, but she did journalistic work as well, didn't she?
I don't remember hearing that specifically, but you may be right, because
I'm gonna do my homework.
Yeah, I would love to know that as well. But she's just, her teachings through our culture, it's just, it feels like she just captures our soul, and she can articulate it in such an artistic way that it's just peaceful for me. Very peaceful for me.
Well, girl, don't you worry about asking Michelle to help you with those dishes. I'll do the dishes. Let me come serve at that dinner, because you got quite a dinner party going on.
Exactly.
I can hardly wait to find out, what would you serve? What would you serve at that dinner?
So what I would serve, of course, we're gonna have the good food and the not so good food. So I don't know if you remember the movie Soul Food, when you had the big long platter of food to choose from. That's my ideal dinner table. So you can have the nice fried food if you want to have a little piece of that. Of course, you got to have, the greens and the sweet potatoes and the corn, and then you have the maybe more healthy food like the salmon and things like that. So it's gonna be a variety. It's gonna be a nice long table with all kinds of just good food.
And you're gonna have Barack at one end and Michelle at the other, so he can eat.
That's right.
Oh, girl. Oh, yeah, that sounds wonderful. I wouldn't expect any less from you. That sounds so wonderful. Let's go 2 for 4. Let's go 2 for 4. Okay. Tell me what you're listening to and why. I'm talking music now.
Mm-hmm. So every morning I get up, I turn my Alexa music onto Mary Mary radio on Pandora. And I listen to Mary Mary because it's the upbeat gospel music that kind of just gets me going. It's just so inspirational, so motivational, that kind of helps set my day. So that's my daytime music. And then when I go to work out.
Hey, you know what? Let me tell you something real quick. About Mary Mary. There was a moment prior, and I'm not talking about August 2nd, which, is the day my husband, my beloved of over 40 years, passed away. I heard you mention 29 years of marriage, and I was like, yeah, to be able to be loved fully and completely, and in something that was a wonderful journey that you knew, we were together for forever. On August 2nd, that ceased for me. But before then, I had an occurrence that was really deep for me. And Mary Mary sang Yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And Yesterday brought me through to a lot of tomorrows and got me here today. So I just want to take a moment in your acknowledgement of them to shout out that, yeah, they do a lot of upbeat, but Yesterday is one of the most poignant songs you can hear. It's also a very teaching song, isn't it, Adrienne?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Absolutely.
It proclaims hope and moving forward, doesn't it?
Moving forward, drying those tears and just going, have a good cry and let it go.
Yeah, those sisters helped me.
Yes.
Who else you listening to?
So then when I go to get my workout on, I'm listening to Jay-Z and Beyonce, because they uplift me and motivate me in another way. They keep me grounded in terms of who I really am inside. So that's my go-to. So I listen to those two. It has to be both of them. I don't listen to just Jay-Z and I don't listen to just Beyonce. I like them as the Carters. That's my favorite genre of hip hop music. That's what I go to them and listen to them.
And then your other two.
My other two that I listen to. So then, if depending on my other move, I'm more reflective, just kind of trying to, think through some things. Jill Scott's my go-to. Got to go to Jill. Oh. Jill puts it in perspective for me as well. Love me some Jill Scott. She could just help me
And
think some
she
things
acts the way
through.
she sings, doesn't
Yeah.
she? When you see her, she acts the way she sings.
She
I mean,
does.
it's real. It's got earth
Real.
and elegance, doesn't it?
Yes, 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 yes. So that's my third go-to. And then I would say my last one would be, I'm old school. So I will usually turn my Pandora on to 80s or 90s hip hop. And
Oh
then
my
I'll just hear
goodness.
various artists from Tupac, he's another one of mine, to Biggie, to Mary J. Blige. I go back to my 80s and 90s when I was coming up and really learning who I was as a person.
Girl, after COVID, we're gonna have to get together. We're gonna have to eat, listen to music. Hey, okay, let's go 3 for 4. Thank you. I know you've inspired a lot of people. They're probably gonna go listen now, right? They're gonna be asking you for your playlist.
Yes.
But 3 for 4. What books are you reading or that you've read that you're gonna share with the family that you think they should be reading and why? 4.
So for the first one is, and I go back to this book all the time, it's called The First 90 Days. I'm terrible with authors, so I can't think of who the actual author is, but The First 90 Days really is a leadership book that helps you understand when you're going into any new situation, new job, how do you acclimate yourself? How do you learn the business? How do you learn the people, learn the customs, learn the norms, the culture, all of that. It really helps you. And it's not just about that new experience, but for me, it's even ongoing lessons of leadership in terms of how to continue navigating through challenges that you may come up with that you're not necessarily familiar with. So The First 90 Days has been my go-to book. There are just so many life lessons in there. The second one is, I actually just pulled it back out. It's probably sitting over there on my bookshelf right now, is Good to Great. That book, you can just read that over and over and over because of all of the key lessons in it about ways that you can just reinvent your business or reinvent yourself. And I always take those books that go beyond just one dimension of whether it's around entrepreneurship or just your career. There are different things that you can learn from it. So that's another key one of mine.
You know, a friend customer of mine recommended that book to me.
Yes.
And he was so kind in Colorado. We were at dinner and in Boulder, Colorado. And he said, I see the work you're doing and I see the passion you have for your work. I met him at NMSDC. He said, I see the work you're doing. And he wanted to share with me a book he thought would help me in that journey from good to great. By the way, family, for Adrienne's full list, her playlist and her reading list, you can go to Ask JBH. I'm going to be posting her stuff there. Adrienne, I'm going to share with them that as well as how to get in touch with you at NMSDC. So The First 90 Days,
First 90
Good
Days.
to Great.
Yep.
And
then my third one is, again, I'll have to give you the author, but it's called The Power of Habit. So how do you really understand things that you should be doing that can really help instill it really helps to change behaviors that you want to really focus on. It's like, how do you really turn those behaviors into who you are as a person? So it goes beyond just a habit, but really about your integrity, your culture, and who you are as a person. So that's my third one. And then I always go back to the one that I haven't read yet, but I'm pulling it out. It's President Obama's latest book about, what's it called? Our Promises. I can't remember the name of it.
That's been on several people's reading lists lately
on
and on several of my guests' reading lists as well. So again, I'm going to be posting that on Ask JBH. Adrienne, I mean, you know, when I think about the 4 books that you're recommending, each of them are so teaching and so giving to someone who's ready to receive wisdom. That's just incredible. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm always a constant student of learning. You have to continue to learn and understand ways that you can improve, that you can develop, that you can grow. It's a journey. It's never ending. So how do you continue to keep your mind exposed to that? And it's so hard in this day and age because there are so many distractions out there, whether it's work or whether it's just when you try to take some time to just decompress and you turn on the Netflix and you try to just let your mind kind of relax a little bit, but you got to stay hungry. And that's what I always try to do. I try to stay hungry for knowledge.
Well, that segues us beautifully into 4 for 4. I want you to share 4 of the lessons you've learned that have been taught you or that you've curated yourself, that you believe this particular family can grow and learn from.
So I think it goes back to the lessons that my mom instilled in me at a very young age. And that is that the first is you can do anything you set your mind to as long as you come up with a good plan and learn how to execute it. Nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible, especially if you're working according to the will that your creator has in you, whoever your creator may be. But if you know your purpose and you know that that's the will, nothing is impossible. So that's one. The second is that it's okay. And this is one I just learned probably in the last year. It's okay to say no with no explanation.
Wow.
Wow. That's hard for me because I'm always that person that wants to help, wants to support, wants to please. It's okay to say no.
With no
explanation.
Whoa. You remind me of when I was growing up, and if dad or mom would say no, especially dad, and daddy, but why? Because I said so.
That's all you need.
Oh, wow. You took me home with that.
Yes, that would be the second one. The third one is that it's okay to fail. We sometimes we become risk averse because we don't want to fail. And we look at failure as this really huge, this horrible thing. But really it's not. Failure is a way of learning. It's a way of growing. It's a way of saying, okay, don't do that again. You won't know unless you try it. So to me, getting comfortable with knowing that you might fail, but that's okay. You learn from it and you move on. I think that's another key lesson that I'm getting more comfortable with, because I too was the same way coming up in my career. I may have played it probably a little safer than I would today because I've got more comfortable saying, you know what, public failure, it's okay. It's a lesson learned because, life goes on, things go on.
I love what you said. I mean, hashtag Adrienne says, failure is just another way of saying, don't do that again. Wow. Wow, I love that. We're getting some, this is rich.
Yes, and I would say my last one would be, if I had to think of one more, and again, I'm trying not to think of the ones that I give my kids, because I give it to them all the time. But my last lesson would be just take time for yourself. Be selfish. Be selfish. And when you are a giving, nurturing person, that too can be very difficult. But if you aren't good to yourself, you can't be good to others. And if you want people to get the best of you, you have to nurture that best of you from within. So that'd be my last one, is understanding ways that you can just take care of yourself. Focus on you. Self-care is important for you to be able to be good to other people.
Whew. Beautiful, beautiful, Adrienne. You have shared your anointing with us. I say anointing because the lessons that you've taught, even in such a friendly, comfortable, casual conversation, are dynamic. They are powerful, intentional, and I would guess hard-earned. So thank you so, so much. You got to come back. You just got to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And listen, in the meantime, from my heart to your home, God bless. Thank you. Stay safe through this pandemic and keep leading us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. I'm here to serve.